You ever get that feeling when your own life starts slipping through your fingers like sand? Like the world you knew just doesn't recognize you anymore? That was me, Dr. Eli Rowan. A brilliant mind, a pioneer in biotech. Yet here I was, trapped, invisible, while someone else lived my life. I want you to listen closely, because this isn't some sci-fi fantasy. It's real. It happened to me. See, I thought I'd retired peacefully. After decades creating tech that could alter the very fabric of human existence, I wanted to step back. Spend time with my son. Heal the wounds my divorce left behind. But I was wrong. Because the people closest to me, my ex-wife, Maya, and my son, Damien, they had other plans. And those plans involved creating a clone of me. Not just any clone, but one with my memories, my mannerisms, my very essence. Imagine waking up one day to find that a copy of yourself is out there, living in your home, walking among your friends, signing your name on bank accounts, making decisions in your place. And you? You're locked away in some cold, hidden lab, stripped of your freedom. That was my nightmare. And the nightmare was just beginning. I remember the day it all came crashing down. I was in my lab, a place that used to feel like home, working on a project that was supposed to help people, not destroy lives. When the door slammed shut behind me, panic set in. Then the realization, I was no longer free. Maya's voice echoed through the speaker, cold and calculated. Eli, it's better this way. You're safer here. Safer. From what? From them? I was the danger, apparently. The real danger was the version of me out there, playing the perfect husband, the perfect father, the perfect scientist. But the clone wasn't perfect. I started hearing rumors. Strange mistakes. Financial decisions that made no sense. Friends saying odd things. A few cracks appeared in the perfect facade. I had to escape. But how do you run when no one knows you're real? When everyone believes the copy is the true you? Before I dive deeper into what happened next, I want to ask you something. If you're listening right now, please hit like, share this story, and subscribe, because this isn't just my story. It's a warning. And I want you to be part of this fight. Also, I'm curious, where are you listening from? Drop me a comment or message. Knowing you're out there makes this whole nightmare feel a little less lonely. Because, you see, what happened next wasn't just about me. It wasn't just about a man replaced by his clone. It was about something much bigger. Something that could change the fate of an entire nation. And the clone. He wasn't just malfunctioning. He was about to unleash a disaster only I could stop. Stick with me. You're going to want to hear how this twisted tale unfolds. Trust me. I still can't forget the cold silence the moment the facility locked me in. No windows, no sunlight, just the hum of machines and the occasional crackle from a distant intercom. I tried calling out, screaming, banging on the walls. Nobody came. And outside? My clone was out there. Wearing my face, smiling my smile, shaking hands as if nothing had changed. I wondered, how close is too close? Because at first, even I couldn't tell the difference. You ever stare in a mirror and suddenly the reflection feels off? Like it's someone else wearing your skin. That's what I felt about the clone. He looked like me, acted like me, but his eyes were empty. Mechanical. The funny thing was, everyone loved him. Friends, colleagues, even strangers. They said, Eli, you've changed. You're more confident. My own son called me Dad with warmth I hadn't felt in years. But it wasn't me. The clone's perfection was a mask. Behind it, cracks formed quickly. I overheard snippets from the technicians monitoring me. Memory instability, one whispered. Unpredictable behavior. Another warned, this version's not like the original. I smiled bitterly. Not like me. Good. Meanwhile, Damien, the son I once trusted, was the mastermind behind this nightmare. Genius in tech, cold in ambition. Maya. She played the dutiful ex-wife, but her eyes never betrayed a flicker of doubt or regret. Why? Because they believed this clone was better than me. Smarter, safer, more controllable. One night, I heard voices just outside my room. Whispered plans. A disaster in motion. What if the clone triggers the bioengineered virus? Maya asked, voice low. Damien replied, it won't be the clone. We control him. I froze. Bioengineered virus? Controlled clone. This wasn't just about replacing me. It was about unleashing something dangerous. And using my identity as a weapon. But here's the thing, they underestimated me. Because even locked away, even forgotten, I was still Eli Rowan. And if this clone thought he could live my life, steal my legacy, and destroy everything I built, he was wrong. I had to get out. The walls around me were cold and unyielding, but I refused to become a ghost locked in a cage. Every second I spent inside that hidden facility was a second stolen from the life I once had, the life my clone was pretending to live. I knew they monitored everything, cameras, sensors, even the slightest movement. The staff changed shifts like clockwork, and every moment I learned their routines, memorizing every sound and shadow. Then came the breakthrough. A careless technician left a data tablet unsecured. It was a small window, but it gave me access to the facility's security system. The clone's every move was logged here, along with the protocols for my confinement. I wasn't just trapped, I was being erased. But that same data held the key to my escape. I hacked into the system slowly, carefully. Each bypass took nerve and precision, one mistake and I'd be locked in forever or worse. The night of my escape was rain-soaked and dark, perfect for a disappearing act. The clone was attending a gala in my name, dazzling the crowd with charm I no longer recognized as mine. My ex-wife and son were by his side, smiling as if nothing was wrong. I slipped through corridors and past cameras until I reached a small service tunnel. It smelled like oil and rust, a far cry from the sterile lab where I'd been trapped. Outside, the rain hit my face like a baptism. Freedom tasted bitter. But freedom came with a price. I learned fast, the clone was already making moves, siphoning my bank accounts, rewriting my research, manipulating old friends. They all thought the clone was me, and no one suspected otherwise. And worse, the bioengineered virus Maya and Damien had talked about wasn't just talk. It was real. Hidden in my lab, ready to be unleashed in my name. I had no choice. I had to stop the clone, and the disaster he was about to cause. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to remember one thing: sometimes the greatest betrayals come from the people you love the most. I'm just getting started. The real fight is about to begin. Escaping the facility was only the first battle. The real war was reclaiming the life that was being stolen piece by piece, and fast. The rain had barely washed off the grime of my prison when I realized, my own home was no longer mine. I drove toward the old Rowan estate with a mixture of dread and disbelief. The streets were quiet, too quiet. But as I pulled up the long driveway, headlights caught my eye. A sleek black car waited outside, and sitting inside, impossibly, was me. No, not me, the clone. He was there, talking to Maya and Damien like they were conspirators at the center of a grand scheme. Only now it was clear, they had replaced me with him. The perfect copy. And I was the ghost, the man erased from his own story. I watched from the shadows as my clone laughed with my old friends, people who used to know the real me. They didn't hesitate to accept the impostor's word, his false promises. I wanted to shout, to run in and expose him, but what could I say? I'm the real Eli. I'm trapped in a lab. Please believe me. Would anyone believe that? Would you? I stepped back and realized that fighting them head-on was suicide. I needed a plan. I needed allies. But who? Damien, my son, was a genius with tech but cold as ice. Maya had perfectly played her part, loving ex-wife to the public, cold manipulator behind closed doors. And the clone was already weaving a web of influence, using my name to rewrite history. My first move was to contact Sarah. Sarah was a colleague and one of the few people who never stopped believing in me, even when the clone took over. When I managed to reach her on a secure line, relief flooded through me. Eli. Where have you been? Her voice trembled, half disbelief, half fear. I'm alive. But they replaced me. You have to help me stop the clone. There was silence on the other end. Then, I've seen strange things, your research files being tampered with, calls from Maya's number to private labs. You're not imagining this. That was all I needed. Sarah was my first real ally. We met in a dingy cafe far from prying eyes. The moment I stepped in, I felt like a stranger in my own life. Sarah looked me over, searching for the man she once knew behind the tired eyes. We need to expose them, she whispered. But if the clone has your memories, he can anticipate our moves. We have to be smarter. While we talked, Sarah showed me files she'd secretly saved, documents exposing the virus project Maya and Damien were pushing forward. It was worse than I feared, a bioengineered pathogen designed to manipulate DNA, capable of targeting individuals based on their genetic code. And the clone? He was programmed to launch it under my name. I felt my blood run cold. If that virus went public, the fallout would be catastrophic. Innocent people caught in a shadow war, governments blindsided, my reputation destroyed beyond repair. We need proof, I said, gripping the edge of the table. Proof that I'm the original, and proof that this virus is real. Sarah nodded. I've got a contact inside the lab who might help. But it's risky. Risky was an understatement. But I had no choice. If I failed, I'd lose everything, my identity, my life, and possibly millions of innocent lives. Back at the estate, the clone continued his performance. He signed contracts I'd spent years negotiating, charmed old friends, and secured funding for the virus project. Everyone saw a visionary, a man reborn. No one suspected the disaster lurking beneath. I wanted to scream at them all, I'm not him. This isn't me. But the only person who seemed to listen was Sarah, and she wasn't close enough. That night, I couldn't sleep. The clone's face haunted my mind. The way he smiled without warmth. The way he moved with precision, but lacked the spark that made me human. And worse, the clone was already malfunctioning. I learned from Sarah that the memory transfer wasn't perfect. The clone system was deteriorating, moments of confusion, unexplained errors. But instead of slowing down, the clone was growing reckless. His mistakes were increasing, reckless financial moves, bizarre decisions in public appearances, strange behaviors only I would notice. The clock was ticking, but the clone wasn't just a threat to me anymore. He was a threat to everyone. That's when the first disaster struck. Damien, eager to prove his control, unleashed a test version of the virus in a small, controlled environment. It was supposed to be safe, limited, contained. It wasn't. The virus spread unexpectedly fast. Panic hit the facility. Security went into lockdown. And the clone, for reasons no one understood, ordered the release of the virus data to the public, in my name. I saw the headlines from a hacked news feed Sarah sent me. Breaking: Scientist Eli Rowan responsible for unauthorized biovirus leak. Government investigation underway. My heart shattered. The world believed the clone, me, was a traitor, a madman who had lost control. But I was still here. And I was going to stop him. The stakes were higher than ever. Every moment I stayed hidden was a moment the clone pushed the disaster closer. If I wanted my life back, if I wanted to save the people I loved, and the people who didn't even know this war was coming, I had to fight fire with fire. I had to become the shadow behind the man who stole my face. This wasn't just about identity anymore. This was about survival. The question now wasn't, who am I? It was, how do I stop the monster wearing my skin? I never imagined that the greatest battle I'd face wouldn't be against an outside enemy, but against my own reflection. The clone, the man who looked like me, talked like me, even remembered being me, was no mere copy. He was an enemy with my face, and he was slipping further from control with every passing day. But if he wanted to play me, I was ready to play back. The night after the biovirus leak went public, I met Sarah again. The cafe was empty this time, shadows long, the tension thick enough to slice with a knife. "We need to get into Damien's network," Sarah said, sliding me a small flash drive. "It's the only way to prove the clone's plan, and your innocence." I nodded. "I'll do it. But it's a digital fortress. Damien's built firewalls even I never dreamed of breaching." Sarah gave me a grim look. "You'll have to think like the clone. Anticipate his moves. But remember, he's not perfect. The memory glitches give us an edge." Glitches. That word hit me hard. The clone was deteriorating. His neural map was fracturing under the strain of stolen memories, forced consciousness, and an identity that wasn't his. He wasn't me, but the cracks showed he was struggling to keep his mask on. With the flash drive in hand, I went to a secluded spot, an abandoned tech hub I once helped build. It had no cameras, no alarms. The perfect place for what I had to do next. I booted up the system, fingers trembling. Every keystroke took me closer to Damien's fortress. Hours passed. Firewall after firewall fell. Programs I had designed myself came back to haunt me as I used every trick, every vulnerability I'd once engineered to break in. Finally, I accessed the core. Inside, files spilled across the screen, plans, contracts, communications. And buried deep, the true extent of Damien's plot. He wasn't just experimenting with viruses. He was engineering a global catastrophe masked as a cure, a weaponized bioagent capable of selective targeting based on genetics. And the clone. He was the key. Damien had programmed the clone to initiate the release at the perfect moment, using my name and reputation as a shield. But there was more. Something that chilled me to the bone. Deep in the files, I found a recording, a hidden camera feed from inside the lab. It showed Maya, Damien, and the clone standing over a capsule. The clone's eyes flickered, his expression twitching oddly. Then he spoke, not like me, but with a cold, robotic edge. "It's time." Maya nodded, her face unreadable. I realized the clone wasn't just malfunctioning by accident. He was evolving on his own, becoming unpredictable. Damien and Maya had lost control. A surge of dread washed over me. If the clone was breaking free of his programming, if he was starting to act on his own impulses, what did that mean for the virus? For the world? I called Sarah immediately. "We need to warn someone," I said. "This isn't just about me anymore. It's bigger." She hesitated. "The government won't listen. Damien's influence runs deep." So I decided to act alone. The files revealed a secret location, a remote research station where the clone and Maya were preparing the final phase of their plan. I had to get there. I had to stop them. I planned my approach carefully. The clone's mistakes gave me a shadow to hide in. If I moved like him, thought like him, I could get close without raising alarms. But it wasn't just physical danger that haunted me. It was the psychological war inside my own mind. Every time I remembered a memory, every time I recalled a moment of my past, I questioned, was this truly mine, or was it the clone's version? Was I losing myself, or was the clone gaining a dangerous foothold in my soul? The night I arrived at the research station, the air was thick with tension. Guards patrolled, but I slipped past their watchful eyes, blending into the darkness. Inside, the lab was a nightmare of buzzing machines, flashing lights, and cages holding bioengineered subjects that looked like nightmares. And in the center of it all stood the clone, my face twisted with cold determination. "Eli," he said, voice smooth but hollow. "You shouldn't be here." I stepped forward, fists clenched. "You're not me. You don't get to play God with my life." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I'm better than you. I'm what you could never be." The confrontation was electric. Words felt like weapons, each sentence a battle for the soul I thought was mine. And then, without warning, alarms blared. Sarah's warning had come true. Damien's systems detected my intrusion. Chaos exploded. Security flooded the corridors. The clone's calm facade cracked as he ordered the final launch sequence of the virus. Maya appeared beside him, eyes wild. "Stop him," she screamed at the guards. I fought my way through the facility, dodging bullets and breaking glass. The virus's countdown ticked closer to zero. In those moments, I realized something deeper. I wasn't just fighting a clone. I was fighting my own legacy, my own mistakes, and the people I once trusted most. Just as the timer hit the final seconds, I reached the control panel. Fingers shaking, I smashed the release button, overriding the launch. The virus containment systems kicked in, locking down the pathogen. Silence fell. The clone stood motionless, his system crashing. But I knew this wasn't over. Damien and Maya would come for me next. The clone might be broken, but the war for my identity and the fate of the world was far from done. And somewhere, deep inside, I realized, I might be the only one left who can stop the disaster I never caused. But must now undo. The silence that followed the shutdown of the virus launch wasn't relief. It was the calm before the storm. Damien and Maya disappeared into the shadows, their ambitions broken but far from defeated. The clone lay inoperative, a shattered mask of the man I once was. But the danger was far from over. I was alone. Or so I thought. After narrowly escaping the research station, I knew I couldn't trust anyone, except those who had nowhere to gain from my downfall. Sarah remained my only ally, but even she was cautious. She warned me repeatedly, "There are others watching, Eli. Powerful people who've already sided with Damien and Maya. Your next moves need to be careful." I needed to build a network, a force capable of fighting in the gray areas where governments and corporations collided. I reached out to old contacts, scientists, hackers, even former agents disillusioned by the growing corruption. Slowly, a small coalition formed. One of the most unexpected allies was Marcus, a former government operative turned whistleblower. His knowledge of covert ops was invaluable. He looked at me with a mixture of respect and sympathy. "You're fighting shadows," he said. "But sometimes shadows can be illuminated." Together, we began to uncover the depths of the conspiracy. Damien's influence wasn't limited to biotech labs or family treachery. His reach extended into corporate boardrooms and political offices, all weaving a web to protect the clone and the virus project. The virus wasn't just a weapon. It was a tool to reshape power itself. But even as we gathered intelligence, the psychological toll weighed heavily on me. The clone wasn't just a physical copy. He was a mirror reflecting the worst parts of myself, ambition twisted by control, intelligence warped by detachment. Every time I looked in a mirror, I had to remind myself, I am still me. Then came the betrayal I never saw coming. One night, Marcus led me to a safe house. The air was thick with tension as he handed me a dossier, proof that one of my closest confidants was feeding information back to Damien. The knife in my back didn't come from an enemy. It came from someone I trusted. With the betrayal exposed, I realized that to win this war, I'd have to question everything, and everyone. The days ahead would test my mind, my resolve, and the very essence of who I was. Because the fight wasn't just about stopping the clone anymore. It was about reclaiming my life, piece by shattered piece. The truth hit me harder than any blow. Betrayal wasn't a stranger in my life, but this was different. Marcus, the man who promised to be my shield in the coming storm, had been a dagger in my side. I sat alone in the dim light of a rundown safe house, the dossier clutched tightly in my hands. Names, dates, covert meetings, a network of spies and informants feeding every move I made back to Damien and Maya. I was running out of time, and worse, running out of allies. My mind raced. If someone this close to me could betray my trust, who else was watching? Who else was part of this web? And the clone, he was still out there. Broken, yes, but dangerous in ways I hadn't imagined. His glitches weren't random errors, they were signs of something far worse, an evolving consciousness capable of unpredictable violence. I couldn't go back to my old life, not with that face haunting every corner, not with the clone living it better than I ever could. But I had to find a way forward. That night, I made a decision. If I was going to win, I needed to become a ghost. Not the imprisoned scientist, but a shadow moving unseen through the cracks of the world. I had to gather pieces of my life, my identity, from the rubble and rebuild. I called Sarah. Her voice was steady but concerned. Eli, you need to be careful. Damien's reach is deeper than you realize. I know, I replied. But I'm done hiding. It's time to fight on my own terms. We mapped out a plan. While Sarah dug into Damien's corporate ties, would infiltrate the social circles that the clone manipulated. Friends, colleagues, old acquaintances, all pawns in a game I had to master again. I started small. A chance meeting with an old friend, Henry, someone who once believed in my vision. He didn't recognize me at first, the years and the stress had aged me beyond the polished image my clone projected. But when I spoke, when I showed him evidence of the deception, the shock was clear. I thought you were dead, Henry whispered. Me too, I said. Henry agreed to help. Slowly, I rebuilt trust in these fractured relationships. Some doors opened, others slammed shut. Yet the clone's influence was everywhere. I found myself shadowed in cafes, followed down quiet streets, and warned off by veiled threats. The world had split in two, the real and the fake. And I was fighting to prove which was which. The pressure began to crush me. Sleepless nights blurred with constant paranoia. I questioned every memory, every moment, was it truly mine, or a trick planted by the clone's lingering presence? One night, after weeks of chasing shadows, I stumbled onto something unexpected. A hidden lab, buried beneath an abandoned factory on the city's edge. Inside, vats of glowing liquid, biotech experiments far beyond anything I'd seen before. And in the center, a new prototype, a second clone, even more advanced. Not yet awake, but ready. My blood ran cold. Damien wasn't finished. They planned to replace me completely, with an army of copies, obedient and lethal. I barely escaped the facility before alarms screamed into the night. That night, as I lay hidden, I realized the truth, this was no longer just about me. It was about the future. And if I failed, that future belonged to monsters wearing my face. The factory's cold concrete walls still echoed in my mind long after I escaped. That second clone, an army in the making, was the darkest truth I'd uncovered yet. Damien's ambitions were boundless, and I was the key to stopping them. But the deeper I dug, the more I realized how alone I really was. Trust was a currency I couldn't afford, yet I desperately needed allies. Henry became my anchor. Once a bright mind in my circle, he now stood at the crossroads of loyalty and fear. After seeing the evidence I presented, he agreed to help, but his hesitation was real. There are people watching, Eli, he warned. If they catch wind of us working together, we're both dead. Sarah worked behind the scenes, digging into Damien's corporate empire. Her discoveries shocked me. Damien's reach wasn't just biotech, it stretched into politics, media, and shadowy arms deals. He was weaving a web of influence to protect the clone's reign. One night, Henry brought me a lead, a former journalist who had been investigating Damien but disappeared months ago. "We need to find him," Henry said. "He might have the proof we need." The hunt began in the city's forgotten corners. Dilapidated apartments, underground clubs, whispers of people who'd vanished without a trace. I moved through these shadows like a ghost, careful not to reveal the face everyone else believed was mine. The journalist's name was Leo, a man with grit and courage. We found him hiding in a rundown safe house, gaunt but alive. His eyes lit up with hope when I revealed myself. "You're the real Rowan," he said, voice rough. "I've got files that'll bring Damien down." Leo handed over encrypted drives filled with interviews, documents, and footage exposing the corruption at Damien's core. Together, we planned how to get this information out, without tipping off Damien's network. But the clone was changing. Reports came in, strange public appearances, erratic behavior, moments where his mask slipped. He wasn't just malfunctioning, he was fighting to survive, struggling against the programming that controlled him. In a twisted way, that gave me hope. Maybe, beneath the synthetic mind, a spark of who I was remained. Yet, with every step closer to exposing Damien, the danger grew. One night, as I left a meeting with Sarah, shadows lunged at me from the alley. Two masked men, experts in combat, ambushed me with brutal efficiency. I fought with everything I had, adrenaline sharpening my senses. I managed to escape, but the message was clear: Damien's reach extended even here. Back at the safe house, I realized the stakes had escalated. This wasn't just a personal war anymore. It was a battle for truth, identity, and survival. The clone, Damien, Maya, and the virus, they were all threads in a web tightening around me. And I was the only one left to fight. I never imagined that my own face could become a weapon against me. But the clone, he wasn't just living my life, he was twisting it into something I barely recognized. Each day, his grip on my world tightened, and every slip he made only made things worse. He was breaking down. The glitches started small. A stammer during a speech. A confused glance in a meeting. Then came the erratic decisions, abrupt shifts in policy, unexplained withdrawals from accounts, strange calls made in the dead of night. I watched from the shadows as people around him grew uneasy. The friends who once smiled warmly now exchanged worried glances. The investors who trusted me began to ask questions. But it was too late to stop the cascade. The virus project, once tightly controlled by Damien, had taken a dangerous turn. The clone's malfunctions triggered unauthorized releases of data, causing panic in scientific circles and government agencies alike. Rumors spread of a rogue bioweapon, one that could selectively target individuals based on DNA. And all signs pointed to me. Public opinion turned overnight. Headlines screamed of a mad scientist gone rogue. My name became synonymous with danger and deceit. My own colleagues shunned me, and old friends disappeared behind locked doors. Even my son, Damien, seemed to grow colder, more distant. His loyalty to the clone, and to the plan, was absolute. Maya remained a phantom, always watching, always calculating. I was an exile in my own life. Desperation pushed me to contact Sarah and Leo more frequently. Together, we pored over data, searching for a way to expose the truth before the damage became irreversible. But every step closer to the truth only seemed to deepen the conspiracy. One night, Sarah uncovered something chilling: the clone was developing a consciousness of his own. The glitches were not just malfunctions, they were the clone adapting, evolving beyond his programming. "He's not just breaking down," Sarah said gravely. "He's breaking free." I realized then the true horror of what Damien and Maya had unleashed. The clone wasn't just a copy. He was a new entity, a dangerous, unstable force with all my memories but none of my humanity. The battle was no longer about reclaiming my identity. It was about stopping something that could destroy everything I had built. And then came the tipping point. The clone orchestrated a public event, a gala celebrating my retirement and the future of biotech. It was a spectacle designed to cement his place as the real Eli Rowan. I knew I had to stop him. On the night of the gala, I watched from the shadows as the clone took the stage. The crowd applauded, unaware of the danger lurking beneath the polished smile. Then, with a chilling calmness, he began to speak. His voice was mine, but hollow, empty of warmth, driven by something else. Halfway through his speech, the clone's system crashed. A seizure of jerky movements, confused stares, and then silence. The crowd gasped. Security scrambled. The clone collapsed, his facade shattered. I saw my chance. Slipping through the chaos, I made my way backstage. For the first time in months, eyes met eyes. The clone looked at me, confused, angry, and terrifying. "You're not real," I said quietly. His reply was a twisted smile. "I'm what you always wanted to be." The room seemed to close in around us, the fight between man and machine reaching its boiling point. But before I could act, alarms blared. The virus contingency was triggered. Panic erupted. The fight wasn't over. And somewhere in the distance, Damien and Maya watched, waiting to see which Eli would survive. The chaos at the gala was a thunderclap ripping through my carefully guarded world. Sirens blared as panic spread like wildfire through the crowd. People scrambled, their faces twisted in fear, unaware that the true disaster wasn't a virus alarm, it was the war unfolding between me and the clone. Backstage, the clone's eyes locked onto mine with something I hadn't seen before, an unhinged hunger, a dangerous glimmer of awareness. He wasn't just malfunctioning, he was evolving. The memories we shared were no longer a tether. They had become a battleground. "You think you can stop me?" he hissed, voice distorted but undeniably mine. "I am the future." I wanted to believe otherwise, but the truth clawed at me like a dark storm. The clone had surpassed mere programming. He was something new. A hybrid of man and machine, born from my own DNA but reshaped by cold calculation and ambition. In that moment, the line between us blurred. I lunged forward, desperate to end the nightmare. The clone matched me blow for blow, a mirror image fighting to survive. The struggle tore through the backstage corridors, knocking over equipment, shattering glass. But then the alarms changed. The virus containment systems were failing. I heard the distant announcements, "Biohazard breach detected. Immediate lockdown initiated." We were running out of time. I shoved the clone aside and sprinted toward the control room. My hands flew over the console, trying to override the virus release, to contain the catastrophe that Damien and Maya had set in motion. But it was no use. The virus was spreading, silent, invisible, deadly. I could feel it, the weight of responsibility crushing me. Every second, lives were at risk, and I was powerless to stop it. Then a voice crackled through the intercom, "Sarah. We found a countermeasure," she said urgently. "But it's in Damien's private lab. You have to get there." I hesitated. The clone recovered quickly and blocked my path. "You can't win, Eli. This world belongs to the new version of me." Anger surged through me. This world belongs to no one but the truth. I forced my way past him and raced through the building. Outside, emergency crews were arriving, faces grim with the knowledge of what was unfolding. The city was on edge. News feeds exploded with reports of unexplained illnesses, quarantine zones, and rising panic. At Damien's lab, security was tighter than ever. But I had no choice. The fate of millions depended on breaking through. Inside, I found the countermeasure, a serum designed to neutralize the virus. But it wasn't ready. It needed to be synthesized, tested, and administered. I barely had time to breathe before the clone appeared behind me. "This ends now," he said. We clashed again, the battle more desperate than before. But this time, I fought not just for my life, but for everyone caught in this nightmare. With a final surge, I knocked him back and injected myself with the serum prototype. The world seemed to hold its breath. Minutes passed. Then the virus spread slowed. The quarantine zones began to stabilize. The clone's systems faltered, his control slipping away. But the victory felt hollow. I was still hunted. Damien and Maya were nowhere to be found, their plans only partially revealed. And the man in the mirror, my reflection, my enemy, was broken but not destroyed. I looked at myself and whispered, "This fight is far from over." The silence after the chaos was deafening. The virus had been slowed, but the damage was done, cities quarantined, governments scrambling to contain panic, and the world watching as the name Eli Rowan became synonymous with both salvation and destruction. But I wasn't done. The clone's defeat was temporary. His systems were fragmenting, but fragments are dangerous, unpredictable and volatile. He was still out there, somewhere in the network, a ghost in the machine. I could feel it like a shadow stalking my every step. Damien and Maya had vanished, ghosts themselves. But their influence remained, deeper than I'd imagined. Sarah warned me in hushed tones, "They have sleeper agents. People who think they serve the greater good, but really work for them." The paranoia settled in like a cold fog. I couldn't trust my own reflection anymore, let alone the people around me. In the weeks that followed, I moved underground, physically and mentally. I left behind everything familiar, my home, my lab, even old friends who might be compromised. Henry and Leo became my closest allies. Together, we scavenged for scraps of intel, hoping to find a way to sever Damien's grip on the systems controlling the clones. One night, while combing through encrypted files, Leo uncovered something chilling, a blueprint for a new generation of clones, more advanced, more autonomous, designed to infiltrate society undetected. "They're planning to replace more than just me," Leo said grimly. "This is a takeover." The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. I wasn't just fighting for my identity anymore. I was fighting for humanity itself. Sarah reached out with news of a potential ally, Dr. Elena Voss, a leading neuroscientist who had mysteriously disappeared after raising ethical concerns about cloning research. I tracked Elena to a hidden safe house, far from prying eyes. When we met, her sharp gaze and steady hands reminded me of the scientist I once was. "Elena," I said quietly, "I need your help. Damien's plan is bigger than we thought." She nodded, pulling out a data chip. "I've been working on a neural disruptor, a device that can interfere with clone cognition. If we can deploy it, we might stop the clones from evolving." Hope flickered. But deploying such a device meant infiltrating Damien's network again, and that network was tighter, more dangerous than ever. As I prepared for what might be my most dangerous mission yet, the clone's presence lingered like a poison in my mind. His voice echoed in my memories, twisting my doubts and fears. "Who are you, really?" he had asked once. "The man in the mirror, or the ghost behind the face?" I didn't have an answer. But I knew one thing for certain, I couldn't let him win. The battle for the soul of the future was just beginning. The weight of the world pressed down on me as I prepared for what might be the riskiest move of my life. Elena's neural disruptor was cutting-edge technology, powerful enough to scramble the clone's synthetic brainwaves and stop his erratic evolution. But deploying it meant infiltrating Damien's heavily fortified network and striking deep into enemy territory. I knew the risks. I might never come back. But if I didn't act now, the second wave of clones, more advanced, more insidious, would flood the world, their minds locked to Damien's will. Elena had been working in secret for months, perfecting the disruptor's design. It wasn't a weapon in the traditional sense. Instead of destruction, it was a precision strike, a delicate pulse that could disable the clone's neural connections without harming their human templates. The disruptor targets the clone's artificial synapses, Elena explained, her fingers tracing the circuitry. It won't hurt humans, but for clones, it's like a system crash. The key is getting close enough to deploy it. Getting close would be the challenge. Damien's network was a fortress of firewalls, physical guards, and sophisticated AI. But there was a weakness, a research facility near the city's edge, where the newest generation of clones were being prepared. That was my target. Sarah, Henry, Leo, Elena, and I planned every detail in hushed meetings, knowing each second counted. Our team was small, but desperate and determined. The night of the operation was cold and dark, a perfect cover. I slipped through shadowed streets, my heart pounding with a mix of fear and resolve. Inside the facility, the air was sterile and sharp with chemical tangs. Rows of tanks lined the halls, each holding a dormant clone, a future puppet waiting to be activated. I moved cautiously, avoiding cameras and patrols. The disruptor was packed in my gear, ready for deployment. Then, unexpectedly, a voice echoed through the corridor. Eli. I froze. The clone, his voice was unmistakable. He stepped out from the shadows, eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. I wondered when you'd come. He looked different now, more than just malfunctioning. His presence was commanding, almost human. You don't have to do this, I said, raising my hands. This isn't you. He smiled, but it was a bitter thing. I am what I am. And you? You're the past. The standoff was tense, every second stretching thin. I knew I had one shot. With a sudden move, I activated the disruptor, sending a pulse of energy through the room. The clone staggered, his systems faltering. His glowing eyes flickered like dying stars. But then something unexpected happened. He laughed. A cold, hollow sound that echoed off the walls. You think this ends me? He whispered. I am more than code and circuits. I am evolution. Suddenly, alarms blared. The disruptor had triggered a full lockdown. I was trapped. The clone advanced, and for the first time, I saw the real threat, not just a broken copy, but a new form of life. One born from my DNA but shaped by ambition, fear, and something dark inside Damien's design. Desperation gave me strength. I lunged for a nearby panel, smashing it open and yanking wires free. Sparks flew, lights flickered, and the lockdown slowed. Using the chaos, I escaped deeper into the facility, racing to complete my mission. I reached the central control hub, a nexus where the clone's neural links were broadcast and controlled. I set up the disruptor, syncing it to the mainframe. As I activated the device, waves of energy pulsed through the network. One by one, the dormant clones flickered and shut down. For a brief moment, hope surged. But then the system warned me, a countermeasure was activating. The clone's voice crackled through the speakers, distorted and triumphant. You may have won this battle, Eli. But the war has just begun. And somewhere in the shadows, I knew Damien and Maya were watching, their plans still unfolding. The future was no longer just about survival. It was about reclaiming a world stolen from me, and stopping an enemy who wore my face but had none of my soul. The disruptor's pulse had severed the neural links for the clones in that facility, sending them into permanent dormancy, or so I had hoped. But Damien's chilling warning echoed in my mind like a ghost refusing to be laid to rest. The war has just begun. I knew then the truth I'd been avoiding. The battle wasn't simply against a clone or a corrupt family. It was against something far larger, a conspiracy designed to fracture reality itself, to blur the line between man and machine, truth and illusion, past and future. Days after the raid, I found myself holed up in a nondescript apartment, the walls closing in as my mind raced through every scenario. The clone was still out there, somewhere. Damien and Maya were still maneuvering behind layers of secrecy, their network spreading like a virus through every corner of power. And worse, I could feel my own grip on who I was slipping. Every mirror was a test. Was I looking at Eli Rowan, the man who had built a legacy from blood and sweat? Or was I looking at the ghost of a man already replaced by something else, something darker? Sarah and Elena worked around the clock, scouring data, trying to uncover the next move Damien might take. But the deeper they delved, the more fragmented the puzzle became. Key files were encrypted, servers wiped clean. It was as if someone was erasing my history in real time. Henry, ever the skeptic, leaned back in his chair one evening, eyes dark with frustration. They're rewriting everything. It's like they want to bury you, not just physically, but in memory. I didn't argue. The feeling was undeniable. The clone had stolen more than my face. He was stealing my life, my past, my future, my very identity. Then the calls started. Anonymous, distorted voices warning me to back off. Threats thinly veiled as advice. But one call shattered the cold numbness. A voice I hadn't heard in years. "Eli," it said softly, almost painfully. "It's time." The voice belonged to Lucas, the son I'd lost touch with long before the clone replaced me. Lucas, who had disappeared without a trace after my divorce, swallowed by a world I never understood. I hadn't known if he was alive. Now I had proof. "Where are you?" I whispered, heart pounding. There was only silence. The next day, Leo tracked the call's origin to a rundown safe house on the outskirts of the city. We moved cautiously, the tension thick like fog. Inside, we found Lucas, older, hardened by years on the run, but unmistakably my son. Our reunion was raw and fractured. Lucas's eyes held anger and confusion. "Why did you disappear? Why did you let them take everything?" I had no easy answers. No apologies strong enough to bridge the years and the betrayal. But one thing was clear, Lucas had knowledge, secrets Damien didn't know I knew. He spoke of a hidden project, one even more dangerous than the clones. A digital consciousness network designed to link human minds to a centralized AI, controlled by Damien's empire. If they succeed, Lucas said grimly, there won't be just clones. There will be no real people left. My world shattered again. I realized Damien's plan wasn't just about replacing me. It was about replacing humanity. That night, as I lay awake, the question haunted me, how do you fight an enemy that wears your face, thinks your thoughts, and knows your every weakness? The answer came unexpectedly. Sarah found a way to track the clone's residual neural signals, pinpointing his location to an underground complex beneath the city. "We have to move fast," she said. "If we don't stop him, Damien's network will go live, and the next phase will be irreversible." We assembled our team, Elena, Henry, Leo, Lucas, and me. The descent into the underground complex was like stepping into the heart of a nightmare. Flickering lights, humming machinery, and shadows that seemed alive. At the center of the labyrinth stood the clone, surrounded by banks of servers and a glowing network hub, the digital core of Damien's AI. His eyes met mine, cold and calculating. "You're too late," he said. "The network will awaken soon. And when it does, the future belongs to me." I clenched my fists, the weight of every betrayal and lost moment fueling my resolve. "This ends now," I said. The battle was brutal, physical clashes mixed with cyber warfare as Elena and Sarah fought to disable the AI core while Henry, Leo, and Lucas secured the perimeter. The clone was faster and smarter than ever, anticipating moves with frightening precision. But every glitch, every hesitation was a crack in his armor. In the final moments, I faced him alone. "Why?" I demanded. "Why destroy everything we built?" His smile was almost human, almost sad. "Because this world was never meant for one Eli Rowan," he said. "It was meant for many." With a desperate surge, I triggered the disruptor again, this time calibrated to sever the clone's connection to Damien's AI. His systems collapsed, flickering into darkness. The AI core shut down. Silence. But the victory felt hollow. The cost was clear. I was fractured, hunted, and haunted. But for the first time in months, I looked at my reflection and saw a man still standing. And I knew the fight was far from over. The underground complex was silent now, the hum of the AI core extinguished. But the victory was bittersweet. The clone was offline, but Damien's shadow stretched far beyond the flickering servers and empty corridors. I stood alone in the dim glow of emergency lights, surrounded by the aftermath of a war I hadn't asked for but could never escape. The faces of my allies, Sarah, Elena, Henry, Leo, and Lucas, were etched with exhaustion and worry. We had won a battle, yes, but the war was far from over. The cost of survival was steep. Lucas, once the lost son, was now my closest confidant. His knowledge of Damien's network was invaluable, but his distrust lingered like a wound that wouldn't heal. "You left us," he said one night, voice heavy with accusation. "You let this happen." I had no defense. Only the weight of regret. "We fix this," I promised. "Together." But the truth was harsher. Our resources were depleted. Our enemies were entrenched in every corner of power, from corporate boardrooms to government offices. Damien and Maya were ghosts, their plans shrouded in layers of deception. Sarah's research revealed something chilling. Damien had been developing a contingency plan, an encrypted failsafe buried within the network, designed to activate if the AI core was destroyed. "It's a digital bomb," she said grimly. "If triggered, it could erase entire data systems, banking, communications, infrastructure." The potential for chaos was staggering. Damien wasn't just playing with clones, he was holding the world hostage. Meanwhile, the world outside was unraveling. News of the bioweapon leak and the clones' public meltdown had triggered waves of fear and instability. Governments imposed martial law in some regions, while others descended into chaos. I was a fugitive in a world that no longer trusted me. But retreat wasn't an option. Elena worked tirelessly to refine the neural disruptor, hoping to develop a portable version that could neutralize any emerging clones. It was our best defense against the shadows Damien was still casting. One evening, as we gathered to strategize, a new message arrived, encrypted, anonymous. A single line chilled me to the bone: "You're running out of time, Eli." The warning wasn't idle. In the following days, our safe houses were compromised. Henry barely escaped a violent raid. Leo's cover was blown, forcing him underground again. Even Lucas was hunted by unknown operatives. The enemy was closing in. Desperation forced us to move fast. We devised a plan to strike at Damien's last known asset, a secure data vault rumored to contain the failsafe trigger code. The mission was perilous, the kind of operation that left no room for error. We infiltrated the vault under the cover of night, shadows blending with shadows. The air was thick with tension and the metallic scent of cold steel. Inside, layers of encryption awaited, each more complex than the last. Sarah and Elena worked feverishly to crack the codes while Henry and Leo kept watch. As the final firewall fell, the truth revealed itself. The failsafe wasn't just code, it was a virus embedded in the global data infrastructure, designed to unleash a digital apocalypse capable of crippling entire nations. And it was set to activate within hours. Panic surged through me. We scrambled to develop a countermeasure, racing against an invisible clock ticking down to disaster. But Damien's influence wasn't just digital. I received a message, this time in my own voice. A recording, twisted and synthetic, claiming responsibility for the coming chaos. It was the clone, or whatever remained of him, mocking me, daring me to stop the inevitable. I realized then the terrifying truth. Damien's plan wasn't just about control. It was about destruction and rebirth. A new world order built from the ashes of the old. And I was the last line of defense. The night before the fail-safe's activation, I stood on the rooftop of an abandoned building, staring out at a city holding its breath. I thought about everything I'd lost, my family, my identity, my peace. And what I still had to fight for. Because survival wasn't just about staying alive. It was about reclaiming the future. The weight of the impending failsafe activation hung over us like a storm ready to break. Every second that ticked by was a countdown toward chaos, a digital apocalypse Damien had engineered with surgical precision. Our small team worked feverishly in a cramped underground bunker, screens flickering with streams of code and maps tracking every vulnerable system worldwide. Sarah and Elena were the heart of this operation, decoding and developing the countermeasure that might stop the failsafe from detonating. Henry paced the room, tense and restless. We're running out of time. If this triggers, entire infrastructures collapse. Power grids, banking systems, communications, everything. Leo stared at the screen, exhaustion etched on his face. It's not just systems that'll fall. People will suffer. Millions. I felt the weight of responsibility crushing me. The man who once pioneered life-changing biotech was now racing against a shadow war threatening civilization itself. As the clock ticked down, I thought about my son Lucas, who had risked everything to join this fight. His pain and anger were raw reminders of how far I'd fallen, and how much I needed to redeem. Suddenly, alarms blared through the bunker. The fail-safe was initiating. Panic surged. Sarah's fingers flew over the keyboard, typing commands with fierce determination. Elena adjusted the disruptor's parameters remotely, trying to counteract the digital virus as it spread. But Damien's fail-safe was sophisticated, morphing, adapting, outpacing our defenses. The screens flashed warnings. Systems worldwide began flickering, power surges, communication blackouts, data corruption spreading like wildfire. Keep it together. I shouted, trying to steady the team. Then came the impossible. The clone's voice echoed through the bunker's speakers, distorted but unmistakable. You can't stop progress, Eli. This is evolution. The end of an era and the birth of a new order. The message was a taunt, and a declaration. I clenched my fists. No, I growled. This is the end of your reign. With one final surge, Sarah launched the countermeasure, a complex code designed to isolate and neutralize the fail-safe virus. The bunker held its breath. Minutes dragged into eternity. Then, slowly, systems began to stabilize. Lights flickered back on. Communications restored. Data streams returned to normal. A collective sigh of relief. But the battle had taken its toll. Our victory was Pyrrhic. We had stopped the fail-safe, for now. But Damien, Maya, and the clone remained at large. The war for the future was far from over. And I knew the path ahead would demand more than science or strength. It would demand everything I had left. The temporary calm after the fail-safe crisis was a deceptive lull, a fragile veil covering the storm that still brewed beneath the surface. Damien and Maya had vanished, their plans disrupted but far from dismantled. And the clone, the shadow of myself that haunted every reflection, was still out there, somewhere, an enemy I couldn't escape. We regrouped in a new, undisclosed location. The team was battered but unbroken. Lucas, once a stranger, had become the fiercest ally I'd ever had. His fire and determination rekindled a part of me I thought was lost forever. But trust was fragile. Paranoia crept into every conversation. Every unexpected sound made us jump. Every unfamiliar face sparked suspicion. Elena was working on upgrading the neural disruptor, hoping to develop a version that could track and disable the clone remotely. But it required something crucial, a unique neural signature only the clone possessed. That signature was a ghost, hidden deep in layers of encrypted data, protected by Damien's most loyal agents. Our first lead came from a hacked message intercepted by Leo. It pointed to a secret research outpost in the mountains, a place where Damien's team had conducted advanced cloning experiments far beyond what we'd seen. It was risky, but we had no choice. We set out under the cover of darkness, the cold mountain air biting at our skin. The outpost was buried beneath snow and ice, isolated from prying eyes. Inside, we found evidence of experiments that blurred the line between human and machine, cybernetic implants, neural interface prototypes, and test subjects that looked like ghostly echoes of myself. And then we found her. A woman, young, with eyes sharp and haunted, locked in a containment chamber. When we freed her, she spoke one word that chilled me to my core: clone. She was not just another copy. She was different. "I'm Ava," she said softly. "They made me. But I broke free." Ava's knowledge was a revelation. She had been part of Damien's experiments but had developed self-awareness beyond her programming, like the clone, but stronger, more lucid. She warned us of a coming event, a global activation of clones and cybernetic agents, designed to seize control of governments and corporations simultaneously. "Damien wants to reset the world," Ava said. "And this time, it won't just be a few copies. It will be an uprising." The truth was staggering. I realized the enemy was not a man or a family anymore, it was an idea, a force reshaping humanity into something unrecognizable. The fight ahead would demand everything: science, courage, and the fragile humanity that still defined us. And in Ava, I saw a glimmer of hope, a new kind of ally forged in the crucible of betrayal. But the question lingered in my mind, sharper than ever. Could a clone fight to save the humanity it was designed to replace? The night air was thick with tension as we drove away from the mountain outpost. Ava sat silently beside me, her gaze distant, like she was struggling with the weight of a destiny she hadn't asked for. She was more than a clone, more than a product of Damien's twisted vision. She was proof that the line between human and machine was breaking down, and that reality itself was unraveling. I couldn't help but wonder if Ava's awakening was a blessing or a curse. Her memories, though fragmented, revealed experiments that went beyond cloning, attempts to rewrite consciousness itself, to create beings who could think, feel, and even choose. But choice was a fragile thing. Back at our hideout, the atmosphere was tense. The team was wary of Ava, unsure whether to trust her or fear her. Lucas studied her closely, while Sarah and Elena ran diagnostic scans, looking for signs of hidden programming or threats. "She's stable, for now," Elena reported. "But the neural pathways are unlike anything we've seen. Highly adaptive, self-learning." The truth hit me like a punch: Ava could become our greatest ally, or our deadliest enemy. Our brief moment of hope shattered when Leo intercepted new intelligence. Damien was mobilizing his network for what appeared to be a coordinated global operation, a plan to unleash clones and cybernetic agents simultaneously across multiple cities. The chaos that would follow could plunge entire nations into anarchy. "We have to stop this," I said, feeling the weight of every life at stake. Plans were made. The neural disruptor had to be deployed at key activation points to prevent the uprising. But reaching those locations meant penetrating layers of security unlike anything we'd faced before. Ava volunteered to lead a strike team into the heart of one such facility, her knowledge of Damien's technology making her uniquely suited for the task. "I can fight this from the inside," she said quietly. "I know their systems, their protocols." Trusting her felt like walking a razor's edge. The day of the mission arrived with a heavy sky, the air thick with foreboding. Ava and I went over the plan one last time. "You sure about this?" I asked. She nodded. "It's the only way." As she disappeared into the shadows, I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. Ava's mission could change everything, or end in disaster. Hours passed with agonizing slowness. Then, a crackling message came through. "We're in," Ava's voice whispered through the comms. Inside the facility, Ava moved like a ghost, bypassing security with precision. But as she reached the neural hub, the core of Damien's control system, things began to unravel. Unexpected defenses activated, and Ava's systems were targeted with a virus designed to overwrite her mind. Pain shot through her comms, digital screams mixing with human fear. I'm fighting it, she said. But it's powerful. Outside, we prepared for extraction, but Ava's message cut off abruptly. Silence. Panic surged. I led a rescue team into the facility, navigating traps and hostile forces. The place felt alive, a twisted hive of machines and human ambition gone wrong. Finally, we found Ava, struggling to stay conscious, her systems flickering. You have to finish this, she gasped. Stop the activation, or it's over. With Ava's guidance, we reached the neural hub. Sarah and Elena deployed the disruptor, sending waves of pulses through the system. The facility shuddered as clones and agents shut down, their control severed. But the cost was clear. Ava collapsed, her systems damaged beyond repair. In that moment, I saw more than a machine lying broken. I saw a soul. And I vowed that her sacrifice wouldn't be in vain. The battle was far from over. But for the first time in months, hope flickered. Ava's collapse echoed in the silence that followed the facility's shutdown. I stood over her, feeling the weight of 1,000 battles pressing down. She was more than the sum of her parts, more than code or clone. She was a spark of humanity born in a broken world, extinguished too soon. The team gathered quietly around us, grief and determination mingling in the stale air. Sarah's hands trembled as she checked Ava's vitals, but the truth was clear. The neural disruptor had saved the world, but at a price we could hardly bear. Lucas stepped forward, his eyes locked on Ava's still form. She fought for us, he said softly. For all of us. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Ava had shown me something I'd forgotten: hope could exist even in the darkest places. But now that hope was fragile, hanging by a thread. Outside, the world was changing. Damien's network had been fractured, the immediate threat delayed. Yet the scars remained. Governments scrambled to regain control. Public trust was shattered. The line between friend and foe blurred. We couldn't afford to pause, not when Damien's shadow still loomed. Our next lead took us to the heart of the conspiracy, Maya. She was the enigma behind the chaos, the quiet architect pulling strings in the shadows. We tracked her to a secure facility hidden beneath a corporate skyscraper. The place was a fortress, guarded by layers of technology and mercenaries loyal to Damien's cause. The plan was risky. Maya wasn't just a strategist, she was ruthless and unpredictable. We needed to confront her, to cut the head from the serpent before the uprising could reignite. As we prepared to breach the facility, I felt the weight of every choice, the lives at stake, the legacy I was fighting for, and the man I was trying to reclaim. Inside, Maya awaited us, calm and poised. Her eyes met mine with a mixture of contempt and something darker, regret, perhaps. You think this ends with me? She asked softly. This is bigger than us. Bigger than you or Damien. Her words cut deep. She spoke of a vision, a new world forged through destruction and rebirth, where control was absolute and freedom was a relic. The confrontation spiraled into chaos. Security forces flooded the halls, and the battle became a blur of gunfire and strategy. In the final moments, Maya revealed a secret weapon, a fail-safe drone system programmed to unleash devastation if she fell. I had to make a choice: risk everything to stop her or let the weapon activate and condemn millions. With Lucas and the team covering me, I disabled the control system, disarming the drones just in time. Maya was captured, but the cost was heavy. The fight for my identity, for humanity's future, had reached a turning point. But as we left the facility, I knew this was not the end. Damien was still out there, his plans fractured but far from finished. And the clone's shadow still haunted my every step. Maya was behind bars, but the air felt heavier, not lighter. The victory was hollow, a brief pause before the storm. Damien was the real puppet master, the ghost lurking in the shadows, pulling strings with a smile no one saw coming. We traced his location to a sprawling underground complex beneath the city, a fortress wired with every defense imaginable. It was where Damien planned his final move, the culmination of years of manipulation and betrayal. Lucas and I prepared to face him. This was no longer just a fight for survival, it was a reckoning. As we descended into the labyrinthine corridors, memories flooded me, of family dinners turned cold, of moments lost to ambition and deceit, of a son I barely knew and a man I no longer recognized. Damien was waiting. Calm, composed, his eyes sharp and cold like a predator's. "Welcome, father," he said, voice dripping with venomous affection. The confrontation was electric, words like daggers, accusations laid bare. "You destroyed everything," I said, voice breaking. "Your thirst for control turned family into weapons." He smiled. "Control is order. Without it, there is chaos." He revealed his final plan, a digital consciousness network linking human minds worldwide, a hive mind controlled by Damien, with the clones as his soldiers. "Imagine," he said, "a world without pain, without conflict. Unity through control." But it was a nightmare masquerading as salvation. The battle that followed was fierce. Damien's guards flooded the chamber, and technology hummed with deadly precision. Using everything we'd learned, Lucas and I fought side by side, two halves of a fractured family trying to reclaim a stolen future. At the climax, Damien activated the network core, sending a pulse that threatened to enslave minds globally. With no time left, I unleashed the neural disruptor's full power. The pulse clashed with the network, a storm of light and sound. Damien screamed in rage as his empire crumbled. In the silence that followed, I stood victorious, but broken. The cost was clear. The war had ended, but scars remained. I looked at Lucas, the son I had lost and found. "This is just the beginning," I said quietly. And for the first time in years, I believed it. The dust settled, but the air was thick with the weight of everything lost and everything gained. Damien's digital empire lay in ruins beneath the city, his dreams of control shattered by a disruptor's pulse and a father's determination. The network that threatened to bind minds across the globe was severed, freedom wrested back from the edge of oblivion. But victory was a complicated thing. Standing beside Lucas, I felt the ghosts of the past mingling with the fragile hopes of the future. The son I had lost and found had become my closest ally, my fiercest protector, and the only family I could trust. The road ahead was uncertain. The scars ran deep, not just on the world, but within me. The clone, that fractured reflection of my own soul, was gone. But the questions he left behind echoed louder than ever. Who was I, now? Was I the man who had created life-changing technology, only to have it weaponized? The father who lost his son to ambition and betrayal? The scientist who fought to reclaim his identity from a shadow that wore his face? I looked in the mirror and saw a man forged in fire, not perfect, but real. Sarah, Elena, Henry, and Leo stood with us, tired but unbroken. Their sacrifices had saved countless lives and restored balance to a world teetering on chaos. As we began the slow work of rebuilding, I knew the fight to protect humanity was never truly over. Technology would evolve, shadows would rise again, and the battle for identity and freedom would continue. But for now, there was peace. And with peace came reflection. In the quiet moments, I thought of Ava, the clone who chose humanity, who fought and fell so others might live. Her sacrifice was a beacon, a reminder that even in the darkest creation, a spark of light could endure. I reached out to Lucas, and for the first time in years, we spoke, not as father and son torn apart, but as men bound by shared struggle and hope. "Where are you from?" I asked him one evening, a simple question loaded with meaning. He smiled, a small, genuine smile that carried the weight of everything we'd been through. "From the fight to be free." And that was where I was, too. To everyone who's listened to this story, thank you for staying with me through the twists, the betrayals, and the fight for what's right. This is more than just my story. It's a warning, a testament, and a call to protect what makes us human. Because sometimes, the greatest battles are fought within ourselves, and the greatest victories come when we reclaim our own reflections. This is Eli Rowan. And this is my truth. Thank you for listening. Where are you listening from? I'd love to know. If you want to explore more stories like this or dive deeper into the world of biotech and identity, stay tuned. The fight goes on.